Christina, please. Yeah.
Planning or conservation in general.
Can you tell us the title of yours?
We don't actually have one.
What do your stickies say?
Our stickies are talking about restore and conserve our eco assets and ecosystem inventory, and we ignored that and went with data instead. Sort of. And our against, or what we really consider our challenges, are numerous, much more numerous than before. And personally, my big one was data overload. But my esteemed team here was really high on looking at really local capacity. Like, how do you instill local capacity? How do you fund? How do you have the infrastructure? How do you have the expertise? How do you have the knowledge? How do you have the ability to communicate local or knowledge within the community? And how do you retain and use information? So we have tons out there, but what do you actually use it and apply it for real? What's our last one? And our next step was suggested by Graham, actually. We cheated. And moving on to really creating some kind of a boundary conservation committee similar to other regional districts have done, other regions, I guess, have done. And actually some kind of an overarching stewardship group to really hold and maintain the 70 data within an area.
Thanks. Thank you. All right, who's next? Who wants to report? Right here? All right. Thank you.
Okay, like the last group, we didn't really abide by the 4 sentences. Yeah. So the topic was decreasing the fire interface, utilizing methods of harvest and silviculture that make sense to basically interfere with future forest fires. And that could be done by harvesting wood that would replace dependence on other types of heating power, like fossil fuels. So the things, I guess, in favor of that would be that there would be a local market. Things wouldn't have to be shipped from the Middle East to keep our houses warm, or from Alberta. We could burn wood that was otherwise being burned in piles, just with wasted heat. We could burn those to heat in our homes using high-efficiency heaters that have a very small pollution footprint, especially considering that we do have to deal with dead wood in the forest anyway, and that heat energy would otherwise be wasted. There are many things standing in the way of this, and I guess the main thing standing in the way would be the provincial stumpage policy, which does not encourage a local reaction to this sort of thing. I don't understand this issue very well, but our next step would then be to educate ourselves about how provincial stumpage policies stop our ability to have these kind of community initiatives, and then coordinate municipal groups and have maybe the municipality take the lead and bring in stakeholders that could make this sort of local economy happen, where wood would be used in a really sensible way to support local economy, and at the same time reduce the millions and millions of dollars we spend fighting forest fires, because we're putting the kinds of barriers in place for forest fires in the future. I guess that's all we can really say. Anything to add?
Good, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just going to interject for one moment, because we were remiss in not recognizing one of our guests who's here to kind of look into our fishbowl from the outside. Where is Darwin? Okay, he was here. Maybe he's in the back there. Is Darwin in the back?
Darwin?
He disappeared when I said I was going to introduce him. There he is.
There's Darwin.
There we go. I wanted to introduce Darwin Harmony, who's a planner, who's worked extensively in the Kootenays on climate change initiatives for that kind of thing. And he's now working on his PhD at UBC Okanagan, studying governance and communication and how different people in an area, in a watershed, during a watershed planning process actually communicate. So right now there's a survey going on that Darwin sent out, which he's trying to get people to talk about their communication links with each other and look at what that means for how we plan and how we might go about setting governance planning for the future. So I just wanted to recognize Darwin's participation tonight and also recognize that we are doing something very interesting here in the kind of conversations we're having, and I look forward to seeing what he has to say about us. Who's next? Who's next over here? Right here? Yeah, we'll just go continue around in the circle. That makes it no one has to volunteer. Demographic for reporters.
All right, so our topic was local solar power. So some of the main things we talked about is that we do have enough sun to maintain passive solar power, and it would also be beneficial in the face of climate change. And some things that we thought about that we're against is there's few Canadian producers out there, and the shipping costs and the carbon footprint due to that shipping. Also, the main thing is there's not a lot of incentive out there for people to put these kind of systems in there. So a good first step was trying to get some incentives, maybe through municipal or provincial government, or even through the utility companies, to try and promote this kind of a renewable resource. And also maybe more research about Canadian companies or getting a local company going in Canada so that we can reduce that cost as well. So, yeah. I also scored it up like I was told in the instructions. We got 29 for and 16 against. So.
Follow directions.
Yeah.
Didn't need to throw you with the mic there. Because, I had a really lucky died.
I thought it died.
There's something here. Test.
Could be the battery.
Test.
Oh, maybe I broke it.
There's a button there. Okay, next group is right here, I believe.
All right, we were dealing with community planning to protect riparian buffers as well as identifying flood hazards. So this is seeming very normal to me to be standing in the community hall talking about riparians. We actually changed the for and against to opportunities and challenges. The main opportunities being public education and awareness, creating that new cultural paradigm or a cultural shift, which we acknowledge may take some time. The opportunity of establishing policies and regulations once there's that new cultural awareness, although we felt that was a lower rated opportunity than the public awareness opportunity. The opportunity to establish demonstration projects, do baseline inventories, the current opportunities available to farmers for funding to protect and restore riparian areas. An opportunity to link flood risk to riparian area protection. That goes along well with the public education and awareness issue, that if people, particularly farmers, were perhaps more aware of the role that riparian areas play in protecting their land from flood risks, may have a beneficial impact on the riparian habitat. And potential for greater collaboration with NGOs. Darwin had cited some examples from the Okanagan where the riparian areas regulation opened the door for groups like Ducks Unlimited to become more involved in the community in projects. Challenges that we saw, first and foremost, self-interest, and secondly, enforcement. We're dealing with private properties and protecting riparian area habitat. Uncertainty regarding the variables around climate change, where are the riparian areas, and similarly with flood hazard areas, where are the flood hazard areas with climate change, and simply with geomorphological change. The floodplain maps that we use currently are 20 to 30 years old, so they may not be reflecting the current 200-year floodplain. Other challenges, impact of other regulations that, for example, the groundwater regulation may have greater or result in greater demand for surface water, particularly farmers watering their livestock. And another challenge is the lack of provincial and federal support, given the diminishing role of the provincial government and federal governments in environmental protection. That's our list.
I'm right here. Thank you. What's your biggest next step, do you think? What are you going to do next about this? You, us, everyone.
We're going to wait for the cultural shift.
And hope they don't wash away in the next flood. Okay, who wants to speak to our next topic over here about water capture, storage, and reuse? Several people ran off here, but Kim is still around. Here you go, Kim.
I think a lot of our group is actually missing. So, yeah, we, like other people, got caught up in the conversation, so we didn't quite follow the script. I like the challenges and opportunities. I think that's how we kind of figured out this category. So, we discussed just municipal infrastructure, how on a community scale we could look at capturing water, reusing water, gray water systems, what kind of opportunities are there. Talked a bit about universal water metering, some of the pros and cons, and got into the issues with that. So just a lot of the times when we started discussing an opportunity, we immediately hit the roadblock, and that's where we ended up spending a lot of our time. So I think that our pro and against, or the supporting and the sort of roadblocking in this department was very apparent, because our conversation kind of kept on going to the challenges. So we talked about water storage cisterns, zero escaping, just talking about incentives on how we can change our land use and water use in the area. And some of the challenges to the opportunities that we looked at were things like acknowledging the issues, so getting people on board. You know, we're really comfortable with our excessive water use, and also we're not really accustomed to storing because we have a really plentiful environment. So how do we get people to proactively change without necessarily having a crisis in our face? Looking at liabilities around things like gray water, and also having gray water and our black water mixed, so community infrastructure that might need to be separated. Looking at toxic inputs and impacts on land, so land usage that impacts the quality of our water, so what kind of opportunities might be there for filtration, remediation, stuff like that. And then, yeah, we talked about world water crisis, so what happens if we do all these amazing things and we have lots of water and our neighbors might not have water. So just talking about the social implications of water in the future with some of the climate models that we looked at today. So that's where our conversation went. We don't have a score on either side, but it's there were definitely lots of challenges and a lot of interesting opportunities.
Where do you think the next best thing in coming out of this is? Like, what's the final? I think if you had the money to spend on something right now, if that wasn't your first concern, what would you do?
Well, personally, I think that conversations like this are really good because you kept on coming back to education and acknowledging the issue. So just talking about our water use and talking about, you know, the large amount of water that people in the boundary use and residential amounts, or I know our current agriculture. So I think that just having conversations is, I guess, the next small step that needs to happen.
I'll just briefly interject there. The next conversation on water conservation and conversation is happening next Thursday, October 3rd in the afternoon in Midway, actually. Our stakeholder advisor group is going to be starting to look at options and needs relating to this question exactly, and start hearing about what are some of our best steps going forward. So it's building that conversation right now. So who's here? Who's here? I'm not here. I don't even know what they're talking about.
I'm here. I think. Oh, there you go.
Oh,
There's the fellow that did the
Can
writing.
you tag team it? Okay.
That's good. Because I'm not sure if I can read his writing.
Thanks, Frank.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I was drawn to this because I actually read the previews of Vandana Shiva's new book, Soil Not Oil, and it's specifically on climate change, peak oil, and food insecurity. And she's doing amazing things in India with crop diversity. and on an economic basis to pull a lot of their. So she says that her solution for climate change is also a solution for poverty. So when we look at the opportunities of crop diversification with the potential future of grasslands, our group was talking about the different types of diversity that we could have, and industrial hemp was brought up by 3 people within the first 10 seconds. But we also have cereal and then crops, and also diversification with livestock to produce your own fertilizer and have more of a systems agriculture and a systems food that connects up with the value manufacturing. The next part was coming from somebody that's experienced with farming and realizing that the farmers only make a 10% margin on whatever they grow, and any other benefits that they can get would help convert their crops from hay to other food products that we can use in our 100-mile initiative. So we're asking, the group was asking whether there can be tax benefits provided by the federal, provincial, and municipal governments. And Rolly's also been working a long time on ecological goods and services, another way to, again, diversify that revenue that the farmers really need to stay in business. So if we're diversifying our crops, and we don't want to have to compete with somebody else that's growing the same crop, the solution basically is to add that crop and convert it into a food with special attributes. So somehow we need manufacturing in the boundary. When we look at the Okanagan and all the fruit packing facilities that created a vibrant Okanagan, they're all shutting down, and because there's cheap apples coming from China. So we really have to have our own agriculture. We have to be able to pay the premium to the farmers so that they can continue farming. Our product that we manufacture has to have a special attribute, and so we can sell a lot of it local, but to be depending on the goal of the farmer. If the farmer needs to make a certain amount of money, put their kids through university and pay their mortgage payments, they have an income target up here, and so a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about is for that farmer trying to reach their income level. We know that there's a lot of small lot farmers that supplement their income by doing farmers markets, and there's other marginalized populations that can't afford high quality food, so they participate in the community gardens. These are all colors of the rainbow on how we can diversify our agriculture and food in the boundaries. So another person said we need to connect with the customers, and they talked about a producer cooperative and how if you get 100 customers, they'll all come in and say that they want this high quality food, but they want to just pay this price for it. But when you have people that are trying to make their income and pay mortgages, they know that they have to sell a lot more, and they have to be more strategic, and since they're investing in machinery and farms and land and things, they'd like that equity not to be threatened. So the producer co-op is by producers. And then there was comments about natural selection versus the genetic and engineering education. That's an important piece for crop diversity. And I'm not sure if that goes on the for or against. And the discussion on how important are research and development and an incubation area. There's been property that's been looked at in the past, so that people would like to see that go forward.
Just before you continue, just top opportunity, top constraint or challenge in here and going forward. I really want to hear about going forward. What's the best next thing? Next best thing.
Yeah. Well, we didn't get quite down to giving weight
No,
to the
just something that
event.
stood out for you. What really stood out for you?
Grasslands and hemp, of course, but I'm biased because I'm one of the first licensed hemp sellers. But cereals and livestock diversity, having some way to add value to that product. Those value-adding facilities, they don't quite, it's not quite a commercial kitchen that you may hear about. It has some very specific machinery in that. I took some pictures of the sea buckthorn machines, and you don't use those machines. If she makes a facility for sea buckthorn, you don't use the same facility and machines that she spends a couple $100,000 on for harvesting cherries. So a lot of the products and what we want to do to be affordable and to be profitable to the region and to the investors in the venture capital corporation that invest in a value-adding facility in the region, we really have to look at the business case and make sure our expenses are lower than what we sell things for. So basically the biggest thing is to start moving into cereals, crops, having a value-adding facility. We have 2 Grand Forks models. They're called Bronson, Son, and Stewart's.
Yes.
And they're quite professional, quite set up and invested in, and if we use their models, we can do the same with agriculture and food.
Awesome. Okay. I've got it. I know you could keep talking. We could keep talking all night long, but I wanted to make sure that we captured last little bit of wrap up. We've got everyone's notes and everyone's thoughts, and thank you very much to Les for recording this and broadcasting it. I believe it will be available on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yes, so that means that actually all of my note taking, I can just skip to the part that I know what was happening in, and I can actually recall what was happening. So I've heard a lot of really fascinating things tonight, everything from the very beginning, from how the food was brought together for this event, to kind of major changes and impacts that were discussed, to some of the opportunities that you grappled with, that we planted the seeds for. But I like that you took it to your own directions as your groups, as was appropriate. So I have some really good data here, and as with the forum, I know a few of you attended the forum last fall on rethinking our waterways in the boundary. I'm going to report on this and kind of, especially the water aspects, use those right away. But I get the sense that there's some interest in building our local capacity to do a number of these things, and I think there might be some follow-up conversations that we want to have about how that might happen, who might be involved, what it could look like in the coming years. So I've got a number of your emails on here, and I've got the contact list, etc. But anybody who would like to be part of that ongoing conversation about how we implement some of these changes, I think we could form a bit of a strategy network and maybe meet a couple times again to look at some commonalities in these systems going forward. I know there's a whole big cluster around water that we're already engaged with in the Kettle River Watershed Management Plan. I think the food aspect has a lot of momentum around it, and a lot of really good people who could really move forward with some of these strategic ideas. And likewise with some of the forestry and ecosystem aspects, there's a lot of connections that can happen there. So I'll be identifying some of those key next steps. Thank you for your help on those, and we'll get back in touch. Any final questions before I pass it back to Grace?
No, I think everybody's tired. I want to say thank you to the regional district people who hung in there because it's such a long day for some of them. And thank all of you for being a part of this because really it will help us go forward with our vision on where we think we need to go. And thanks to all of the speakers because where would we be without that presentation? And the quick and the message is so easy for everyone to buy into. So I want to say thank you very, very, very much for doing that, all of you.